Everyone at the annual charity gala was dressed in their finest clothes. Flashing cameras, sparkling lights, and whispered conversations filled the grand ballroom of the Waldorf Hotel in New York City. The guests were rich, powerful, and important. At the center of it all was Mr. William Hartley, the billionaire businessman known not only for his tech empire, but also for his mysterious past. At 65 years old, he was strong, proud, and still very much in command of every room he entered. William stood near the large window, sipping sparkling water as he watched the city lights. His assistant Jason stood nearby, checking his tablet and reminding him about the people he needed to greet. William was calm, polite, but distant. He rarely smiled, and he never stayed long at these events. His life had been full of hard work, tough decisions, and loneliness. He had never married and had no known children. He believed in keeping his life private. That's how he liked it until that night. At the far end of the ballroom, a young black woman named Zariah Morgan stood nervously near the buffet table. She wore a simple but elegant blue dress, her natural curls falling just past her shoulders. At 23, she was a college graduate and worked part-time at a community center for underprivileged youth. She hadn't planned to attend the gala. She wasn't rich or famous, but she had won an essay contest about social change. The prize was an invitation to the event. She had never felt more out of place. As people mingled and laughed around her, Zariah clutched a small, folded photo in her hand. Her fingers trembled. Slightly, she hadn't come just to enjoy the party. She had come for a reason. One that had haunted her for the last 4 years, ever since her father died. Zariah had grown up in a small town in Georgia. Her father, Thomas Morgan, was a quiet man who worked as a mechanic and raised her alone after her mother passed away. He had never talked much about his past, but Zariah had always wondered about one thing: a strange birthmark on the side of his neck, an unusual shape, like a faded star with a curve. He had always said it was just a coincidence that his mother told him his father had the same mark, though he had never met the man. After her father died in a car accident, Zariah had gone through his belongings. In one of the boxes, she found a torn photograph, black and white, of a man who looked surprisingly like the billionaire William Hartley. On the back was a faded note. Well, summer of '85, that was all, but it lit a fire in her. Father had no known connection to anyone wealthy or powerful, yet that photo was real. And then there was that mark. For years she had tried to ignore the thought, but the more she learned about William Hartley's age, his early years before becoming rich, his time in Georgia as a young man, the more the pieces didn't seem random. She couldn't shake the feeling that her father had been related to him, maybe even his son. That night, Zariah finally gathered her courage and walked toward the billionaire. William noticed her before she reached him. Looked like one of the usual people who approached him. There was something honest in her eyes, and for some reason, he didn't turn away. "Good evening," she said softly, her voice shaking. "Good evening," William replied with a nod. "I don't believe we've met." "No, sir. My name is Zariah Morgan." She paused, her throat dry. I know this will sound strange, but I need to tell you something." Jason, the assistant, stepped forward, sensing discomfort, but William raised a hand to stop him. "I'm listening," William said. Zariah looked around nervously, then lowered her voice. "Sir, my father had the same birthmark as you, right here on the neck." William blinked. The statement hit him in a place he had locked away for decades. He didn't react outwardly, but something shifted in his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said slowly. Zariah pulled out the old photo from her purse and handed it to him. "This was in my father's things after he died. His name was Thomas Morgan. I think you knew him. I think he may have been your son." Photo, his hand trembled, just slightly. He turned it over. The faded words on the back made him freeze. Jason stepped closer again. But this time, even he could see something was different. William looked at Zariah again, harder this time, really looking. There was something in her face, something familiar. He swallowed. "Where did you get this?" "It was in a box under his bed." Never talked about his father, but his mother always told him he was left behind. His father had been a young man who left town and never came back. William took a step back, holding the photo like it was a piece of a puzzle he thought he'd lost forever. I did live in Georgia. In the 1980s, I was only 25. I was poor back then. I worked odd jobs, tried to make enough to move to the city. I had a brief relationship with a woman. Her name was Angela. Zaraya's eyes widened. That was my grandmother's name. Silence fell between them. The music in the ballroom faded into the background. Jason slowly backed away, realizing this was no ordinary conversation. I never knew, William whispered. She never told me she was pregnant. I didn't mean to leave anyone behind. Tears welled up in Zaraya's eyes. He always wondered about you. He said he never blamed anyone. But I think it hurt him deeply, not knowing. William turned toward the window again, struggling to gather his thoughts. He had spent his whole life building a business empire, becoming one of the richest men in the world. But what did it all mean if he had abandoned a son he never knew? A grandson he had never met? Do you have any proof? He asked gently, turning back to her. Only the photo and the birthmark. But I'm willing to take a DNA test. I just needed to tell you. I've carried this for too long. William nodded slowly. All right, let's get the test done. A week later, the results came back. The DNA test was a match. William Hartley was the biological grandfather of Zaraya Morgan. The news never made it to the press, thanks to his team of lawyers and advisors. But within William's heart, a storm was brewing. He had missed the chance to know his son Thomas, who had died 4 years ago. He had missed birthdays, graduations, everything. But he had a second chance with Zaraya. He invited her to lunch. At his private estate, she was nervous, but he welcomed her warmly. They talked for hours. She told him about her childhood, her father's kindness, the struggles they faced. William listened, truly listened, for the first time in years. He took her on a tour of the house, showed her old photos, even brought out one of the only pictures. He had from his youth a picture with Angela, Zaraya's grandmother. It matched perfectly with the one she had. It was undeniable now. In the weeks that followed, William slowly opened his life to Zaraya. He brought her into his world, not as a publicity stunt, but as family. He set up a trust for her, helped fund the community center where she worked, even invited her to speak at his next public event about youth empowerment. People were curious about her, of course. Some whispered, some speculated. But William stood beside her every time, introducing her simply as my granddaughter. Zaraya, for her part, remained humble. She didn't want luxury or fame. She wanted to honor her father. She wanted to build something that lasted just like William had done, but with heart and purpose. And William, he changed. He smiled more, laughed more. He began visiting schools, attending community events, funding scholarships. People noticed. The man who had always been a powerful figure became something more, a human being with a heart. One evening, as they sat on the porch of his estate watching the sunset, William turned to Zaraya. You changed my life, he said quietly. You reminded me of what truly matters. Zaraya smiled softly. I think you changed mine too. Maybe we were both missing something. The sky turned orange and gold. For the first time in years, William Hartley didn't feel alone. He felt like a man who had lost something, but had also found something far greater: family. And it had all. Started with a simple sentence. Hi, sir. My father had the same birthmark.